morning. Sorry for the technical difficulty. I started the live and then it apparently cut off without me realizing it. But we're here. We're gonna eat some lunch and my hair's not cooperating right now with this clip. Whatever. Tuesday? Is it Tuesday? Bosnia, what up? We're just gonna make some leftovers happen because they've been sitting in the fridge and I've gotten lazy about cooking. Usually I think when my mental health is really bad, I just start eating crap and snacks to get me feeling less mentally stuck and more physically stuck. It's almost like rumination through chewing. It's also really funny because several people have said on previous lives watching me and Aaron interact that Aaron might be on the spectrum. But lately I had a college friend tell me that she feels as if I could possibly also be on the spectrum. And inconclusive, I've spoken to another autistic friend, and he was like, you could be, you could also not be. I'm not sure, but certainly you have autistic traits. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay. Apparently, there's a lot of sensory stuff with autism that I wasn't aware of. So, you know, a lot of them seem pretty common sense, like sensitivity to loud noises. I absolutely hate engines revving. I truly hate fireworks. Just loud noises in general make me very irritated, probably coming from a place of fear. But also I've been starting to think about like what I like to eat and how texturally based it is sometimes, the preferences for mush, the preferences for crunch. They're both very pleasing to me, but they both belong in the kind of polar opposite realms of textures. So I don't know. I'm not letting people label me. I'm just exploring what like I'm back, and so sorry for the technical difficulties, but I am determined to use this phone until it's absolutely dead, because my thought process is I paid for it and I'm going to get my money's worth out of it. And also throwing away a phone, just a lot of waste involved in throwing away technology. Like, it's really not environmentally friendly. But anyway, I'm back. I hope you're back too. I'm making some ginger tea first, to calm the nerves and the system and my ovaries and my uterus and whatever else is sloughing out of me. I feel like the discourse about ADHD and autism flared during the pandemic. Like, it trended on TikTok and all of that, so it's very in to be autistic. Oddly enough, I guess we just ran out of things to be hip with, and now we have moved on to neurological disorders and differences. I don't know what to make of it, but I also know that, you know, much like how our discourse surrounding mental health regarding depression and anxiety changed a lot over the last 20 years, a lot of this could be like societally and environmentally driven too. Thinking about how we label disorders, thinking about how we label health issues and conditions and the framework surrounding them, what influences those lines of definition, those criteria. I think it's all worth considering that maybe, you know, like, we are all just getting weirder and less standardized. One, because we now have the language and the research to allow for this difference. And two, like, you know, we just keep expanding. The universe is expanding, our society is expanding. I mean, we're also backtracking, but we're also expanding at the same time because life is a paradox. tattoos on my stomach. Did you watch the Depression Week video? Because if you did, there's actually a shot that I included in there as I was getting my... Was it the Depression Week video? It was one of my week-long videos where I was getting a tattoo. And there's a shot of my stomach. There are various cherubs and naked ladies on my stomach. And there's some flowers, and there is also something that sits right on my sternum that looks like a open mouth with rows of teeth showing, and I call that tattoo the Eternal Moan. I call this stomach area my grief patch. It's basically when I started getting tattoos after my mom died, because tattoos were always something that she probably would have never let me get without totally freaking out. And it was very therapeutic for me to get them. We're going to take our bell peppers and wash them and seed them and chop them, and we're going to combine it in a pot with my leftover chili, and we're going to eat the chili. And that might be it, or if I feel like more cooking, then we might cook something else. But I just felt like I needed to use these up. They're getting really shrivelly. My content is very calming for you. That's great. I mean, some people really can't stand the level of depressing affects that I often display in my videos, whether they be edited or not. So I'm glad to hear that some people enjoy them and find peace in them. That's always nice. Thanks for sharing. So again, something for everyone, right? It's not one size fits all. I guess you just have to find the people that you work with and leave behind the ones that you don't. And the good thing is we now have, like, I don't know, 11 billion people in the world or something like that. I truly don't know what our population is anymore. I stopped keeping track after we hit 8. Did you remove some of your videos from YouTube? I don't think so, but you want to tell me which ones you're missing and I can help you find them if you'd like. Yeah, we live in a world where we're constantly obligated to chime in, right? We feel like we don't exist unless we say something. Hence these lives, I guess. They are very egocentric lives. But also, I've been thinking a lot about how during the BLM movement in 2020, there were a lot of critiques coming out about, like, when you uplift other voices, don't center yourself. And I think that kind of discourse has also come out in our recent acknowledgement of what is happening in Palestine and how to center those voices. But I've also been thinking about the fact that, like, as we live as a human being, how is it possible for us to not center ourselves? Because we are the center of our own perception, right? We are centered by default of thinking through our own brains about this world. So I wonder how much of that, like, came from a good place to start, but has now become a sort of extension of cancel culture. Because how are we supposed to process things without us in the picture? That's just something I'm thinking about. I don't have any solutions. I don't have any like conclusions, but I wanna revisit this trend. I guess it's an extension of PC culture too, which, you know, like PC culture is good to have, but no culture is good to sustain past a certain boundary. So I think we do have to like perform some checks and balances from time to time and actually engage and think about the whys behind these edicts. I've also seen on social media this push for people to buy eSIM cards that they can then send to journalists who are in Gaza who currently don't have any connection to the world. Apparently some of them are working out, so that's a cool thing. If that interests you, if it behooves you. Siobhan says, how do you center other voices without making a statement yourself? That's the thing I'm struggling with right now. I think that's how we started the Instagram trend of just reposting stuff, you know? Someone posts a grid post and then we just reshare it on our own stories and with no additional commentary. But that's also like, that also puts us into a pattern of resharing without adding to the conversation, or resharing without engaging in more critical thinking. We become echoes of each other, which isn't necessarily bad. Again, I'm not placing any judgments against people who do or don't do these things. I'm just simply thinking through what it means to center other people's voices and never centering your own. What does that push us to routinely think and talk and engage? Like, in what ways does that sort of rule change us? Hi, California, and good night, Soul. Guys, come. I did it. I organized them. It looks really cute right now, but I don't know how long it's gonna last. Let's think about what spices we can put in here. Okay, let's do a little bit of this. Kofta Baharat. This is a origin blend from Istanbul, Turkey. Traditional Turkish spice blend for meatballs, stewed meats, and vegan dish. This classic blend of chilies, garlic, cumin, allspice, has savory, warm flavor and aroma, perfect for traditional Turkish and Eastern Mediterranean dishes. Black Urfa chili, silk chili, cumin, allspice, garlic, sea salt, sunflower seed oil. Perfect. I was hoping for a little bit of spice in my chili. This will do the job, I think. What does allspice taste like? Allspice tastes a little bit like cloves, nutmeg, and cinnamon had a baby together. That's what it tastes like to me. Have I ever cooked Southern soul food? I mean, I developed a black bean, a black eyed pea recipe for delish, and I don't know, I don't really think that qualifies. I mean, I've made cornbread. Technically, I feel like that falls into the Southern food canon, but I wouldn't say I've made like any traditional cornbread. I have made cornbread though. Can you really make soul food if you don't have soul? That's my question. I feel like soul food is totally dependent on who's making it to qualify, you know? And me, I'm not just saying like you have to be black or anything. I'm also saying like you have to be Southern, and I don't have Southern blood in me, so I don't really. I've gone to Savannah, Georgia once. I've been in South Carolina for an ultimate frisbee tournament when I was in college, and like that's about it. That's the extent. Soul food is when you cook from love, yes. But I would also argue that my like lentil mush does not qualify as soul food in other people's eyes, you know? Although, you know what? No, I don't have a lot of love. TBH. Sometimes I cook with love. Most times I just cook because I want to play or I want to do something and feed myself at the same time. So I'm going to say that's a no. Yeah, ghoul food is good. I would argue that we could term my cooking as ghoul food. I wouldn't object to that. I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about soul food around the world, you know. When I hear soul food as someone who's been raised mostly American, I think about Southern American soul food, which is deeply tied to black traditions from the time of slavery, to my understanding. But I also don't know much about soul food at all. So I feel like my gut answer to that is no, but I could get some soul. I could put more love in if I have the raw materials with which to work. Interesting. You think bumbo is soul food? Okay. Well, then in that case, I would argue like Chinese soul food would be like congee and steamed buns for me. I feel like those are the most comforting things that I associate with my childhood, and they're very pedestrian and common, and every household can make them or buy them at least. Um, what kind of southern dishes do you want to see me try? And do you want to see me try eating them, or do you want to see me try making them? I'm down to do both, but I'm curious to know what you want. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? If I ever made a cookbook, this is going to be a recipe in the cookbook. It's going to be hot chili and salad greens. What I like to do is take a bunch of salad greens and then dump hot stew on top and let them wilt. Then I get my veggies and I get my mush, and it's great all together in one bowl. Collard greens and grits. Okay, those are very doable. Okay. You love the way I cook beans? Like just instant potting you? Like, I don't really know if I cook beans a specific way. I've learned to kind of batch cook beans plain, and then I use that batch of cooked beans in multiple ways. It can become chili, it can become hummus, it becomes bean salad, cold, tossed in a mayo-based vinaigrette of sorts. Beans are great. I love beans. Pig feet. Pig feet is very much a Chinese thing too. I don't know the southern way to prepare it, but in Chinese cuisine, pig feet is, I grew up with it, so. Yeah. Oh yeah, I cook beans in the Instant Pot, which is not the same thing as a slow cooker. The slow cooker, I have to admit, is my least favorite cooking vessel. I hate the way it makes things taste. Most of the time, unless you're cooking with something extremely fatty like pork shoulder, if you cook chicken breasts, even chicken thighs in a slow cooker, it sucks all the flavor out of that meat and toughens it up to such a degree that it's like completely rubberized. So I'm not a fan of slow cookers. Gave them a try. I don't think they're much use to me personally, and an Instant Pot can become a slow cooker too. So I would rather have a pressure cooker that takes up counter space than a slow cooker that takes up counter space. Speaking of southern food, I have this opened kefir. It's not expired yet, but it's been open for a while. I kind of want to remake cornbread. I ate all the last batch, by the way. It was fine, but it wasn't cornbread. It was way too wet. Somebody made the observation that it looked too wet, and they were right. It was too wet. So I'm going to taste this kefir and see if it's usable, and if it is, we're gonna make some cornbread with it. It looks a little bubbly, but it doesn't smell off. It's a little sour, but I think we can use it. So let's use it. Ooh! Oh, girl, no, 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 no. Just spilled my tea all over. Sorry. Give me a sec. You make chili oil, should you add it to your fried rice? Yes. That's not a question. I don't know if kefir is a good substitute for buttermilk. I would argue they're very similar. So I would say personally for me, yes. Well, now my entire counter smells like chai. That's great. There's tea on my floor. That's great too. Has anyone used mace before? Have you used mace before? Mace is the thing that covers nutmeg. They have this like cool floral pattern almost. They look like alien webbing in a way. And I put a few crumbles into like my ginger tea yesterday, and it gave this very like earthy, woodsy, creamy flavor. Which was very interesting. I'm not sure if I would do it again in my tea, but I liked it. For sure. Cornbread. Okay. Last time we used oat flour. I don't think that was a great idea because oat flour tends to be very sticky. Now maybe today I could try it with rye flour. Or I can do 100% cornmeal. Which do we prefer? Cornmeal. You want to do 100% cornmeal, guys? Okay. If that's what you want. I'll do it. It's pretty dark over here. Let's move you over. This is our failed recipe from last time. It's not really a recipe at all. I used olive oil last time. I currently only have that, neutral oil or butter. Now, I could use the butter. I think I will use some butter. But I think I want to see how much of this yogurt I can make. So let me try to melt this butter up a little bit. Maybe like 4 tablespoons of butter. That sounds good, right? Okay, I love all these Southern cooking tips. Please keep them coming. Teach me something. I'm down to learn. Okay, we have some cornmeal 100%ers and we have some please add flours in. So, I see the different opinions, which is why I said rye flour. You clean? Mostly clean. That's fine. I'm going to add in some Chinese red sugar, which is very molassesy, very untraditional. I understand, but I just really want to use some of it. My mom used to tell me that it's really good for replenishing the iron that's lost during your period. So, I don't know, man. I'm just doing what my mama told me. Well, she didn't say put it in cornbread, but she did tell me to use it when I'm on my period, so. No sugar in cornbread. No, not for me. My cornbread needs sugar. Sorry. I'm a sugar freak. Then we're gonna go in with some raw sugar. Less than a quarter cup, guys, okay? Just a little bit. I'm sorry. See? This is why I can't say I make soul. Everybody's canceling me. It's fine. It's fine. The thing is, if I don't do something against the grain, it doesn't bring me the same amount of pleasure. Cooking is as much of an experiment as it is making a product that I can eat, you know? Like, that was some salt that just went in. Last time somebody told me I didn't add enough baking powder and baking soda. So today we're gonna do 2 teaspoons instead of 1. And a little baking soda. Oh, sugar or not in cornbread is a great Southern debate. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Okay. Do you guys put eggs in your cornbread? Eggs or no eggs? Ooh, it smells so good. Right now with just butter and sugar and lavender. Must eggs. No eggs. Oh, wow. Absolutely no decisions will be made today, ladies and gentlemen. Why egg if you have butter? I think it's more about the texture, you know? More than anything. $200 grams. So just under a cup of this kefir. Do we want spices in our cornbread or no spices at all? We have about 1.5 cups of cornmeal. Maybe we go in with a little bit more because this is looking a little too sloshy. We want it to be a little more solid, I think. What kind of spices do you guys put in your cornbread? So let's go up to 2 cups of cornmeal. Oh, I don't know about savory garlic and chili. I don't know about that. Seems a little too much for me. Does anyone ever make yeasted cornbread? I think I want to experiment with that next. Some yeasted cornbread. Okay, we can put in a little more kefir, I think. Another 1/4 cup of kefir just went in. Do I have bacon spice? No. What's bacon spice? Do you mean bacon or baking? I do have baking spices, but I think that depends on what you want to do. What do we think about this texture? Is it going to be too dry once it bakes? Or is this appropriate? Ooh, cinnamon. Interesting. I'm going to wait for you guys to chime in while I eat. Too dry. Okay. Last time it was too wet. This time it might be too dry. Who knows? Maybe we'll never get it right. Maybe our entire lives are just a pendulum swinging back and forth. No rest for the weary. Your mom said that milk. Okay, we always listen to mom. I mean, best case scenario, I can finish this kefir. I would love to finish the kefir and not have to deal with it. Ooh, salt and pepper. I like pepper. I like the sound of pepper. Pepper is a very, like, I feel like neutral spice, you know? It can go into anything, really. I think this looks good. I think that actually looks very good. So, 2 cups of cornmeal and like 1.5 cups of kefir. Pumpkin spice, interesting. I do have this mystery spice that I don't know what's in there anymore that I made on an episode of Budget Eats. Well, last time I made it into cake batter, Tanisha, and it did not come out well. Maybe I need to like put even more baking powder in it. How much baking powder do you and mom put in there? We're gonna go in with a little bit of Malden just because I'm feeling fancy today. Then I think I'm gonna smack it with a lot of black pepper. 2 teaspoons, okay. That's what I did. Can't you add cheese? Yeah, you can add anything. It's cornbread. Do I want to add cheese? Not really. I also agree. My favorite thing about cornbread is that it balances sweet and savory together so well, which is why I don't want it to lean too heavily in one direction over another. Whoa, you don't do baking powder? So there's no leavening at all? That's amazing. I've never heard of that. But you do have eggs in there, which I don't have. Happy Halloween! Currently no eggs in here. Guys, would it be sacrilegious? Would it be sacrilegious if I put, damn, what was I gonna put in there? Frick, forgot it. Oh, would it be sacrilegious if I put walnuts in there? I added baking powder and baking soda. That's the white powders that I added. I do think that the lack of eggs will contribute to some sort of lack in the final product. So I'll go in and I'll add a little bit of flax and chia, just as a binder. Wow, no walnuts. You know that I'm not making a traditional cornbread, right? All right, let's turn on the oven. We're gonna bake at 375. Can you add chocolate chips? Listen, you can add whatever you want. Am I gonna add it? No, I'm not. I haven't gone to that degree of sacrilege yet. One day, I might. Not today, though. I want to be canceled for one thing at a time. Butter wrapper, always the way to go. Okay, next I'm going to do another sacrilegious thing. But I really liked it last time, so I'm doing it again this time. I'm putting a layer of millet on the bottom for crunch. It's kind of like coarse cornmeal texture. And I do really love it. And I totally hear you on the let your cast iron heat up in the oven for a crispy crust, which is why I'm gonna do what I do for my pizza recipe, which is we're gonna actually heat it up on the stove first for a more direct heat. And then once the millet starts to pop a little bit, I'll put the filling. I can't show you how to make a good popover. I don't even know how to make a good popover myself. Coconut milk is good for almost anything, I think, so you do you. For the remaining kefir, I might brush it over top depending on how it looks. This is so different, yes. I remember in 2020, because of the BLM movement, a lot of food media was up in arms about like cultural appropriation and how people do all sorts of weird shit to cuisines. And like food media was getting canceled because of the way that they've fucked up different international recipes to make it more easy or approachable for, Americans, mainly white Americans. And I think that moment in time made a lot of us who were working in food media at the time very scared and timid and hesitant to like play with food. And I felt like that was really sad for me to experience. I can't speak for other people from my background. I can't speak for other people from different cultures. But for me, I don't mind seeing people from different backgrounds playing with Chinese food, like play with it. I guess the thing is when you call something authentic, that's when it becomes a problem. But because of our cancel culture habits, instead of just calling out when people were calling authentic things authentic and inauthentic things authentic, we started to like gatekeep what people can and can't do with food. And that's when I started feeling really closeted in a way. And that was also when I was starting to do budget eats, when all I would do is basically commit sacrilege against different cuisines by mashing things together in ways that they weren't supposed to be. But I'm surprised I never really got canceled for it. There's, honestly, it's not like specific people who are butthurt. I think it was like a moment of cultural reckoning of like, oh yeah, our society is really fucked. Let's take a look at what else we've been doing wrong. And instead of actually chasing after institutional wrongs, we started like chasing after individuals and singled out specific companies without realizing that like probably almost every company was doing the same shit. So that was interesting. We've lived through a very interesting time, y'all. I hope we've learned something somehow. I hope. But I think true joy comes through interacting with the food. Just the way that like real learning needs to involve some sort of hands-on practice. I think food has always been a point of cultures that underwent transformation constantly. Cultural diffusion and all of that shit, That's how we end up with fusion things. Do some fusion things absolutely suck? Yeah. But all foods have the ability to suck. I don't really think it's limited to any one person fucking it up. So, I don't know. I'm for food sacrilege. How does that texture look? How do we think it's gonna turn out? Is this gonna be too dry still? Perfect. I have to sprinkle more sugar on top. I'm so sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm sorry for those of you who are like, no sugar. I just like having a crunchy element, So a little bit of sugar sprinkled on top, and a little sprinkling of salt. And now we go into the oven. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. We will all try and see how we like it now. Reading all your comments. Reading all your comments. What's the line between authentic and bastardization? Immigrants especially have had to adapt recipes for hundreds of years as they've moved to new places and certain ingredients are hard to come by. Yeah. I mean, I think we're now in a phase of modern culture where we don't really keep authenticity in that same way anymore, and I think we started celebrating a sort of bastardization. Think about the fact that like diaspora cuisines have been more cherished in recent years. How that really just means the evolution of a certain cultural food tradition. I don't know what kind of cornbread I'm making either, girlfriend. That's what's fun about it. If I just gave you cookie cutter recipes that I knew would work, that other people have made before, yeah, you get to see another food video, but you wouldn't see weird shit. I like seeing weird shit. Hong Kong breakfast, mac and cheese toast. Hong Kong cuisine, even like modern Korean cuisine, they've gone through so much cultural diffusion by way of like military influence, just the bases of foreign soldiers stationed there, affecting the food that they've made for these foreigners, and then affecting local taste buds and preferences too, you know? I think it's really fun. Do all foods come from a place of history and sort of oppression and trauma and hardship and triumph? Yeah, like that's all part of it too. Flaky sugar. I've only seen sugar crystals, you know, like crunchy ones, like Demerara. Sugar in the raw kind of thing. I don't know if sugar molecules are capable of flaking the way we see pyramids flake in salt structures. I didn't brush this over. Oops. Oops. also didn't set a timer. Let's set one. Let's check in 10 minutes first. It's not gonna be done, but I wanna see the progress. Does anyone ever realize how easily you can be bothered by the smallest dirtiness and mess when you're already depressed? Did that rhyme? That rhymed. I've been noticing that a lot. That's when I know my depression is really bad. One, because I'm letting my apartment get to the place where I'm annoyed by how dirty things are. And then two, I get really triggered by noticing how inept I have been when it comes to cleaning and upkeep. Because it shows me just how off I've been. You look at the mess and you basically rage quit. Yes. Yep. That's exactly how I feel. Like yesterday I was showering, and for 2 weeks now I've been staring at my shower curtains, and you know how they get moldy, especially on the bottom. They form that like yellow tinge that grows into shit. And then I was just staring at it, and then I started noticing my shower curtain is like hybrid fabric with a little kind of water repellent layer. And I started noticing that there were like little dots of black mold on the bottom of it. And I just felt so gross and disgusted. And I felt like I needed to do something. And I felt really sad too, because when you see how dirty your place can get, it also makes me feel like nothing I can do will ever prevent this from happening again. And my brain immediately puts this cycle of having to clean constantly into the context of the world will never get better. And it like, my brain just made the connection of how we constantly have to do work to make sure the world doesn't behave the way it's behaving now. And it just feels exhausting. And the way that depression thinking lights up my brain into these spirals of feeling anger and helplessness is real. It's a really fascinating mechanism. Like, it almost shuts down my critical thinking in a lot of ways and just makes me ruminate on how little control I have and all the negative emotions that come from realizing you're stuck in this pattern and cycle of constantly having to be Sisyphus, pushing the boulder up the hill only to have it roll back down again, and condemned to do that until the end of your days. Like, that's what depression feels like to me most of the time. And when I get tired enough of that cycle of rumination, then I start having emotional breakdowns, and that's basically when I start tapping out of things like exercising, which I haven't done in 3 days, but it's mostly because I've been going through pretty bad cramps due to my period. It's when I give up things like putting clothes away at the end of the day. So then I have piles of half-worn but not quite dirty enough for the laundry clothes piling on all seated surfaces. I give up trying to organize my kitchen or to wipe down the stovetop, which I'm doing right now. I give up cleaning out my fridge and paying attention to what produce I have to eat before it goes bad, because all I want to do is snack on easy things like peanuts and chocolate and maybe once in a while I'll eat an apple, but surely I can't cook. So that's my experience of depression, and not everyone feels depression in the same way, but it can get really bad really fast because it's just a snowball of internalized anger, I think, is the best way I can phrase it. I think all of my feelings of hopelessness, helplessness come from anger, and anger is not the beginning of the story either. Anger is a conduit of feelings. So then when I am more clear-headed and less depressed, I can try to go back and pick out what caused the anger, but that also involves like having to kind of re-immerse yourself into unideal feelings, which can be triggering sometimes, in order to figure out what exactly led to the spiraling to begin with. All of which to say, mental health is really intricate, and if you want to figure shit out, you have to be prepared to like hurt again, but hopefully with the framework that you're experiencing this voluntarily and for a purpose. I do wipe down the shower after using it every day, actually, but the curtain being part fabric and, you know, where it's sewn up to hem it traps a lot more moisture. That's where the mold starts. And like there's, I feel like I start inching into the territory of like being extremely anal when I wipe down everything to the last bit and inch. So it's kind of like all these calls that you have to make as an adult, as a human being. Where do I draw the line? You guys ever bust out crying for no reason at all? Yes. I mean, there is a reason. There's just not one reason, but there is a reason. It's been stacking, and finally your body and your mind decides it's time to cash out, and you cry. And yes, depression affects different people very differently. And I do have a tendency to want to self-isolate because usually my depression is coupled, comorbid with body image issues too. So then I feel like shit, and then I feel like I look like shit, and then I feel like I'm a mess, and I feel this internal sense of shame and guilt to a certain degree, but less so these days. But the shame still stays because I'm always constantly judging myself, and then I feel like I'm just not presentable to the world, and I don't want to show this side of myself to other people, so I self-isolate. I think that's a very common depression trait too. Sometimes I'm worried that mold poisoning will be millennials' version of lead poisoning. I mean, try a hose attachment with high pressure nozzle. Yeah, that's something I don't have, but thank you. Thank you for the advice. But anyway, I decided to like fix my shower curtains yesterday, and I dumped out the last bit of bleach that I had into a yogurt tub, and then I scrunched up the curtains, and then I dipped the moldy part of the curtains into the bleach, so hopefully today it will have gotten rid of some of the bleach. But yeah, it's just a kind of residue of everyday living, the pressures that build up that don't feel like they are quantifiably bad until they've accumulated all together, and then everything feels bad all the time. Okay, I dig it. This looks good, guys. We're gonna go for 5 minutes more. I'm gonna look for a little color on top, but that looks good. That looks more cornbready than our first time, for sure. You're autistic with ADHD and chronic depression. What does that manifest like for you? What are some symptoms, if you want to share, of living with those conditions that other people might not clue in on to? Have you... And another thing that I've been thinking about is, do you identify with your mental disorders? Because at this point, I fully started to feel like my more depressive side is a part of me. I think a few years back, we were always in the habit of saying, well, your depression doesn't define you. And I get that, your depression doesn't define you wholly, but I feel like my depression is a part of me. So when people tell me your depression isn't you, that actually triggered me quite a bit, because I feel like on a certain level, my depression is me. I'm not saying my depression defines 100% of me, but I'm saying my depression probably defines at least 25% of me. So yeah, I don't really like the way that we've started alienating our physical, mental health and conditions as completely separate from us. In the same way that we are individualized in terms of our ideology and philosophy, at least in the Western world. Science comes out that say, like, our bodies are filled with microbiomes, right? We're houses for bacteria. So to what degree do we own ourselves? And to what degree are we ourselves only? And how is it that we can say, well, this disease is not me? I do feel like if it affects you and if it affects the way you live, then it is a part of you. That's just how I'm thinking about it. So it's been making me critically think about a lot of these paradigms that have come up about mental health. And I've been thinking more and more about this the past year or two after getting fired, because I've had the space to like detach myself from my professional persona, detach myself from my professional alliances completely. Not to say that I was like always falling in line when I was at Hearst, obviously not, that's why I was fired, but to be completely unattached gave me the space and the time to actually think about, do I agree with these statements that I've been told to believe in? Okay. Comments. Well, the autism demands structure, the ADHD demands constant amusement, and the depression makes me feel like I'm losing the war between the two constantly. Whoa. I've never heard it put that way, but that's definitely sounds like a catch-22. I mean, I can't say I'm either one of those. I do feel like I have depression, but that does sound applicable to some of the states that I've experienced. I definitely feel like I've been suffering a little bit without the structure, but I think I've had a whole year of trying to navigate how to structure my own life. The constant amusement, I do feel like ADHD, if it's defined by that in part, we can all agree that being on our phones, having increased screen time, going on stuff like TikTok, have all made us addicted to constant amusement. So, your therapist told you last week that she suspects you have OCD, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Yikes. Intense, unrelenting anxiety that seems to mess with you the most. Ay, ay, ay. True. Yeah, I agree. Being a part of you and letting it control you are not the same things. Although I've also started recently questioning the concept of control and how much control we have in our own lives over ourselves and our own desires, you know? That too is, who can say? Who can say how much we own ourselves? It looks good, guys. I'm going to turn the oven off. I'm going to let it sit in there for a few more minutes, and then we can cut into it while it's still hot so I can give you a review. But it looks very good. Thank you for all of your advice on how to make a bastardized cornbread. Also, my hair is getting quite ridiculous, isn't it? You do recommend to eat fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and fermented foods. I don't disagree. Those are all very good things to eat. The fighting to not control everything is something I struggle with. I think we all struggle with it. I think our society has given us this messaging of you should be in control of your life at all times, and if you're not, then you're failing as an adult. And I think we all feel guilty whenever we see something that's not being controlled extremely well, that's been placed under our jurisdiction of control. But I think part of awakening is realizing that that too is, to a degree, a lie. You are never fully responsible for anything. That's not to say that you're scot-free when you know, do things that hurt other people, or even do things that hurt yourself. There are consequences to pay for that, whether you pay for it or someone else does, depends on the situation. But this narrative of we are constantly liable to be good is something that is deeply troubling. And I think it's something that deeply affected my mother, and I think it was a detrimental aspect to her experience of life, because she felt responsible for so many things that she really could not fully control. So yeah, I wish I could go back and tell mom to not be so hard on herself, but now I tell you guys all the things that I wish I could have told my dead mom, I tell internet strangers. Dee Dee says 63 years of depression and loneliness, and I feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. My 64th falls on Thanksgiving this year, a holiday I've always hated. I'm just gonna take that in for a sec. I mean, agree and disagree. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. The point is to find the light inside the tunnel and have the vision adjust to the darkness inside. If you are holding out for the end of the tunnel, then you are waiting to die. The fact that you have remained for over 6 decades tells me that you're waiting for something, tells me that you still have hope. I think it is hard to always concentrate on finding light that is supposed to be there for you externally. And it might take some encouragement and support network to discover that there are other sources of light that is not the light at the end of the tunnel that you feel like should be there. But these other sources of light are things that can guide and support you nonetheless. And fuck Thanksgiving. Truly. Who cares? Lots of people celebrate it. Maybe people who have nice associations of the holiday with their families and eating good food and being together and feeling loved. And if that's not something that's been there for you, then yeah, fuck Thanksgiving. Because Thanksgiving is a holiday that was based on this whitewashed narrative of how America was born and how, you know, the Pilgrims were buddies with the natives that they actually participated very much in killing, or condoning the killing of, or complying with the killing of, much like we are. So, you know, I don't know how much we should celebrate Thanksgiving for its origins. And so if it's a holiday that doesn't apply to you because it doesn't actually afford you family time and love time and good food and cheer time, then yeah, it's not a holiday for us. Not all holidays have to be for everyone. Not all holidays are for everyone. I know a lot of people get really sensitive about like Mother's Day and Father's Day, people who have never grown up with healthy families, or parental relationships, or people who have had their parents die and it just reminds them of their loss. I personally don't, I mean, I feel sad on Mother's Day, but I just realized that this is not a holiday that's for me anymore. Maybe never was. And I let that be that. So if you've decided to stay and live and see your 64th and beyond, what is there for you in your life that you would like to see more of? Because every day that you're here is hopefully a chance for you to find something that makes life worth living. And if there isn't currently anything that you deem to make life worth living, is there something that you can make worth it? Because I think we can all agree that the worst thing to be at is a party you don't want to be at where everybody else is having a great time and you're just miserable inside. So switch up the party, or go to a museum instead, or cook a meal on your own, or read a book in bed, or I don't know, eat some ice cream while watching movies, or sit underneath the tree while the fall leaves land on you, or stare up at the clouds moving by, or listen to music, or go into a grocery store and check out something that you've never had before, or listen to strangers talk as they pass you by, or watch birds, feed squirrels even though they tell you not to, stare at other people's dogs in the dog run, go thrifting. These are just things that I do, by the way. You gotta find something, or you're just gonna be miserable, right? There is no ultimate purpose to being alive, but we find the small things that apply to us. And everyone likes different things. Everyone lives with different conditions. Everyone has shitty parts that we hate about ourselves and our environments and our cultures, and parts that don't agree with us that we have to stomach down and try not to throw back up. So how do you make it worth it? Maybe you're still here because you feel compelled to live the life you've been given. And if that's the case, I hope you realize that life is more about enjoying the breath and less about the obligation to breathe. And maybe you don't need to seek so hard for things that make life worth living. Maybe you just have to lower your very, very, very high standards for a life that was never yours to begin with, and accept the life that you currently have and try to repurpose some of it into a new narrative. I think after my mom died, you know, I said to myself, survival is about the lies you let yourself believe in, or something like that. I can't even quote myself verbatim anymore, but I struggled with a lot of guilt and shame after my mom passed because I felt like I was never nice enough to her and I never did enough for her. And I think after enough strangers told me, you know, your mom knew that you loved her, and despite all the fights that you guys had, I'm sure as your mother, she knew how much you appreciated her. You know, after so many times of strangers saying that to me, I finally started to accept it. And whether or not that's the truth, whether or not my mom actually knew, whether or not I actually did love her that much, it doesn't matter right now, because the narrative that I have to believe in order to survive with not as much torture and self-flagellation is that she did know, is that I did love her, is that we did do the best that we could, and is, you know, she died because she was stressed and had health issues. And I simply weren't aware, and maybe I did do stuff that stressed her out, but ultimately her death is not because of anything that I did, but simply because she died. Because people die. I don't think there's a reason for why all the people in Palestine are dying right now. I think we can blame it on governments, and I think we can blame it on specific leaders, and I think we can blame it on abstract human greed and the capitalistic machine that prizes profit over people, but ultimately, those are just excuses that we tell ourselves to make sense of things, to have someone to blame. Ultimately, the people who died are dead. I've been seeing a lot of dead birds recently on the ground. I feel like they probably crashed into windows and just died on impact. But I've seen like 3 dead birds in the past 2 weeks, which is way more frequently than I've seen them before. And every time I see a dead animal, I think about dead people, because we are animals too. And I think about, you know, like, is there a reason why this bird died today? Do we blame it on the window? Do we blame it on human engineering? Do we blame it on human presence? Do we blame it on us overtaking every other species' environments? Yeah, we can, but what's the point after a certain time? Cornbread time. Smells really good. I can smell the almost buttermilky aspect of it. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's little bits of cornbread settling into itself. Minute little crackles. Moisture being evaporated as it continues to heat. Smells really nice. Smells like corn cakes. Let it sit for 5 minutes. Why is there no smell-o-vision? Indeed. Why is there no smell-o-vision? We have pockets of the red sugar that I didn't quite whisk out and blend out, and they're just like little blistery eruptions of molassesy sugars now. Rub some butter on top. Yeah, that would be the real way to do it. But girl, let me tell you, I ate like 2 pounds of nuts yesterday, 1 pound of almonds and 1 pound of peanuts. And my body is like, please, control yourself. Control yourself. Do we go for 12, 3, 6, or 9 o'clock? Where do we go? I want this little lumpy bit. But I feel like it's gonna be a very disappointing cut because it's so flat. But you say wait and taste? Okay, wait and taste. 13. Yes. Very good. Thank you for the troll. I did miss the trolling. More butter, do not control yourself. I'm saving room for all the Halloween candies. What up, South Africa? Yeah. Always top your cakes with sugar. It gives you a glisten, it gives you a crunch, it gives you an additional boost of flavor, traps in some more of the moisture by forming a little crust that, you know, prevents further evaporation sometimes. Good stuff. The thing that I'm not doing with brushing butter over right now is brushing butter over a hot cake softens the crust. And I kind of really, really, really like the slightest crunch as I bite into my piece. So that's why I'm not doing it. I'm also not doing it just because my body says so. So I'm gonna listen to my body today. But yeah, that's how I've been feeling. I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm saying all of these things out to, one, process, two, to find community, I guess, to provide a space where we can feel like feeling this way is natural, and to relieve the shame by way of group bonding. I think you can always tell a friend who's suffering through mental issues, there's nothing wrong with you, you'll be fine, things will get better, but it hits differently when you're offering your own experience of how awful it can feel. So instead of giving empty words of affirmation, I like to give concrete descriptions of depression and negation so that we can concoct our affirmations together. You know, let yourself hit rock bottom, but know that there is a bottom to hit, and know that when you're ready, the surface will be there to greet you if you allow yourself to be open to it. These are the cycles of life. Winter, spring, summer, fall. Up and down, waning and waxing, forward and back. Maybe the trees feel stuck too, going through the cycle every year. I don't know how they feel. But that's how I feel. Your sensory issue does not care for the sugar on top. Well, my sensory issue cares for the sugar on top. Rose says, I must say your advice to live as if you were going to die in a week or even tomorrow has been freeing for me. Yeah. Oh, and prompted your tattoo. All of this is temporary reminds me of my favorite book in the Bible, which is Ecclesiastes. And in that book, there is a time for everything. And there is a time for everything. Hi, Belgium. Catherine says, suffering is feeling or saying something should or shouldn't be in the past, present, or future, when in reality, pain is just a part of life, often a bigger part for some of us. Amen. Don't forget that when you were born, that process was painful for all parties involved. Probably for you, probably for mom, and probably for all the staff at the hospital, if you had staff at the hospital. We are born under the context of suffering, but also entwined in that suffering is a feeling of fulfillment and joy, which is why I think at the heart of it, life is very masochistic, and we should live accordingly. Choose your own masochisms to indulge yourselves in, and know that, you know, if you indulge too hard, you might tip over on the other side a little too quickly, but indulge it from time to time. And not all pleasures are painless, and sometimes painful ones are even more pleasurable. It just depends on how fucked up you are, because our species is really weird. You had 6 inches of snow? Damn. We had some rain. You wonder what my sweatshirt sounds like if we played those as audio files. Yeah, I don't know. You can try to replicate them. Welcome to Buddhism. Life is about suffering. Yes. How do we suffer the way that brings us joy? Look up the word suffering. I love me a little etymology. Its original meaning was to undergo. We attach the pain to our suffering. We attach the pain to our suffering. Fascinating. Yes, I feel like that is a very Buddhist concept, indeed. You may suffer. You may experience pain. But maybe pain doesn't always have to mean suffering. I think part of the existential pains that I'm most familiar with come from this feeling of my life shouldn't be this way. My life should be another way. And it's in that denial of my current circumstance that I find myself to be in the most intense mental sufferings. Even if there's nothing physically wrong with my situation, I can make myself feel like shit. Awesome. I mean, Chinese families also gather around the kitchen too, you know. I feel like it's a very basic part of a lot of cultures. That's a bad idea. I shouldn't put my laptop there. You're totally right. So I'm glad. Thank you for gathering in my kitchen. Courtney, why are you in the hospital? This is 100% cornmeal. Cornbread. That's a nice looking crust. Sorry. Only got 2 hands. Let me lift my curtains up a little for natural light. There we go. There we go. Nice. Nice millet crust. Nice, moist interior. It's not gluey or gummy. It falls apart, but it still holds. It's really hot. Let's let it cool a little bit, my mess of cornbread. With a little pocket of red sugar. I don't exactly know what I did that's different, but you saw me do it, so. All right, I'm gonna go bite the crust first because I've been eyeing this piece. Mmm. This would taste a lot better with more butter, but it already tastes really freaking good without the extra butter. And I do agree, I think the moisture content was perfect this time. So I believe that was 2 cups of cornmeal, fine cornmeal, to 1.5 cups of kefir. Mmm, delicious. Courtney, you doing okay? I'm a little worried. I think we're all a little worried. But glad to hear that you are still with us. Here's the millet crust. Great crunch. Excellent. Thank you for your encouragement for a 100% cornmeal cornbread. It definitely has a lot stronger of a cornier flavor. And here's what it looks like, cross-section wise. All right, y'all, I have to get back to work. Courtney, I hope you're surviving. And everyone else, stay hydrated. Vitamins if you take them, sleep, rest. Heartbeat of a runner or a swimmer? Interesting. Ooh, liver failure. All right, folks. Happy Halloween. Stay safe. Eat candy. Maybe eat a little too much candy. Maybe feel a little bit guilty about it. But don't knock yourself out with your own punches. It's not necessary. Okay?